lifelong learning. If you can see the data from now, since the first day of establishment, there are about 200,000 of people enrolled in the Open University Malaysia. We have already produced almost 100,000 graduates so far, and currently we have nearly 28,000 active students throughout the country.
Life is a series of choices. The best way to predict your future is to create it with a vision and aspiration to become more. Take every challenge as an opportunity, turning limitations into possibilities. It's not always knowing exactly where you're heading. Sometimes it's about finding your way. To go that extra mile to see your future unfold. At Open University Malaysia, we create opportunities for all to be the leading provider of flexible learning. No matter where you are, how much time you have and commitment in life, we are designed to be affordable, flexible, and accessible. Our tailored program of courses are intellectually designed to meet the demands and future economic drivers of the world. In a world where digitalization thrives, OUM connects you to an engaging learning experience as we embrace the new digital era. Our advantage lies in our learning centers' nationwide presence, making it all accessible to you. Learning should be acknowledged regardless of how and where it is nurtured. Through our Apple Center, we grant recognition to individuals with our prior experiential learning for admission and credit award. At OUM, our innovative digital portal allows you to engage in online programs, classrooms, workshops, and access our online libraries with limitless resources. Open University Malaysia prepares you for tomorrow, sets you on the right path of excellence with an enhanced career support and network, inspiring you to not only focus on academic excellence, but also the holistic development of individuals. Build lasting friendships and meaningful bonds. Open University Malaysia brings you a step closer to your dreams. A catalyst for transformation where leaders are made. Open University Malaysia, the university for all.
Hello, Assalamualaikum and good morning. So today is my turn and Dr. David to handle this coffee talk. So before we proceed, maybe let me introduce ourselves first. Let me introduce Associate Professor Dr. David Lim. He's the Program Director for Bachelor of English Studies and Master of English Studies. And for me, myself, I am the Program Director for Master of Corporate Com. So today our topic is why humanities and social sciences is very important and how you can learn about this humanities and social sciences through English studies and communication program. All right, so maybe for the start to begin with, we can ask Dr. David, what is social science and humanities all about and how this field or disciplines related to English studies and why this thing is very significant for today's world.
All right, thanks, Dr. Dila, for the introduction, and welcome to this session. The coffee talk is really, as Dr. Dila said, to introduce you to the humanities and the social sciences, and especially our programs that the programs that we're handling, English as well as communication. So, I think a lot of people don't quite understand what the humanities and the social sciences are, even though these disciplines are entirely relevant to their lives in ways which they're not fully aware of.
Yes.
For instance, when you work, when you socialize, when you look at the world, when you interact with people, there are a lot of filters that you're using which you're not conscious of. Like you're looking at the world through certain lenses.
Yeah.
You're using language to speak. You're using particular strategies to talk to people, to handle materials.
Yeah.
And all these things are unconscious mostly. But when you come into the programs, when you do social sciences or the humanities, then you'll be made aware of all these things operating at the back level. And you'll also be trained in the kinds of theories and ways of looking at things, as well as perhaps language also, so that you'll be able to interact with the world in a very conscious, critical way.
Yeah.
So most people will ask, so what is the difference between humanities and social sciences? I think the first thing we should bear in mind is that these are social constructs, so they're not exactly watertight.
Yes.
And they overlap quite a bit. So depending on who you ask, they'll say that this discipline falls under humanities,
Correct.
and this discipline falls under social sciences. But in fact, we'll see them as one, simply because we're looking at the human at the center of society, and how the human operates within that society, how it has evolved, how it makes signs, how it communicates, how it interacts, how it understands itself.
Yeah, correct. I believe I agree with Dr. David because many people have misconception between humanities and social sciences and all the programs of discipline under these two field. Basically, even humanities and social sciences are two distinct disciplines, but these two disciplines intersect and complement each other. And in general, what we can say, these discipline, humanities and social sciences, telling people about what is, teaching something related to the culture, on how the society evolve, on how the people communicate, and etc. So maybe Dr. Can tell us why these social sciences and humanities is significant for us.
Okay, right. Let's just look at the programs that I'm in charge of, English studies. I think a lot of people who are interested to do anything to do with English, they will not think too much about whether this falls under humanities or social sciences.
Okay.
I think most of them will be interested in the language aspect itself, and they will be trying to figure out how this fits into my interest, how this fits into my life, what I can do with these programs and what I've learned, and how can I apply it in my life, in my career. So in that sense, they will look at one of the sub-disciplines within humanities, which is English, on its own, rather than trying to relate it within the broader context. But if they were to follow English, for example, they will come in with a certain understanding of what English is about, and that's another big story altogether. And as they come in, they will learn, they will unlearn, and they will figure out how this discipline itself, i.e. English, fits into the whole broad picture of things. So a lot of them, when they come to do whether Bachelor or Masters of English Studies, the first thing they'll think of is the language itself. But the discipline is more than just the language.
Okay.
And also there are different ways of packaging English, depending on which institution is offering the program. Some will make it a focus purely on English language, mostly. Some will cross it with literature and language. Some, like us, we call it English studies because we're looking at a broad discipline itself.
All right.
And we are looking at the discipline as made up of multiple strands. So we look here at not just language, and not just things like grammar, English language proficiency, ability to write and speak and listen well and things like that. That's the language aspect of it.
Okay.
The advanced literacy skills that we're looking at.
All right.
And they'll also be looking at language studies, understanding the phenomenon of language itself.
Okay.
Why is English, for example, the global language that it is today?
All right. Yeah.
Is it because English is inherently superior to other languages? Which is obviously that's not the answer.
Okay.
But a lot of people have this misconception that English is, for some reason or other, inherently superior to other languages, and other languages are seen to be somewhat, for some reason or other, inferior, and therefore they are not global languages.
All right.
But that is not really the case. There are various dimensions to why a particular language can be a globally dominant language, and for that we look at language studies. So you get advanced literacy skills, being able to operate in a language well. You understand the language, and then there is also the fruits of the language, which we call literature. And even that has evolved. It is not just pure literature. Nowadays we look at textual analysis of all kinds of texts, including film and visual art.
Okay.
And then, of course, there is a cultural component of things, where we look at the world, whether it's text, visuals, film, anything at all, human behavior, human language, through the lens of culture. And we're very critical about how we look at things. So that really describes in some the discipline of English itself, which not many people understand.
Yes.
And they will only really understand when they get into the program.
Yes.
And experience these various kinds of courses.
Yeah.
And when they exit, then they will say, that is what English is about, and it is beyond the language only.
Yeah. Okay. When doctor say about misconception, okay, I do have one question specifically on English literature, because I noticed that some people have misinterpreted between English literature and TESOL. Communication also have some misconception among the public. So I will tell mine later after yours. So what is actually the difference between these two?
Okay, that's a very good question. I get asked about this all the time. They want to do English, and therefore the only thing to do is TESOL.
Okay.
And they don't really know what TESOL is even.
Yeah.
They think English equals TESOL. And when you ask them to break down what TESOL means, they can't really.
Okay.
They don't know that TESOL stands for Teaching of English as a Second Language. So I think a lot of times students who want to do English, they equate English with TESOL, and they equate TESOL and English with the career prospect of teaching only, full stop. So that is a kind of a reduction of the discipline into one thing only, when in fact it can be many, many things.
Yes.
So we usually advise students when they come in, like, what is your interest? What do you want to do? And there is no right or wrong answer to how you pick something. It depends on your interest. Sometimes some students are more informed. They will look at the curriculum of TESOL and they will look at English, and they will say, which one speaks to me more?
Okay.
And then they will go into that.
Oh.
And some of them will ask me, if I do this, if I do TESOL or English, can I do this and that?
Okay.
And that's something that we can talk about later on about careers lah.
Okay.
But I think in my case it is such. In
Yes.
your case also, as you said,
Yes.
communication also has some kind of a misperception
Yes,
of the disciplines, right? So maybe you can explain a little bit.
For communication, memang from the beginning, since I joined dalam academia ni, people always think that communication is something that they can learn throughout the life. No need to take or enroll any academic program, because there's, according to them, communication is soft skill only, which it is not at all. All right, communication consists of soft skill and hard skill. All right, so hard skill means because you have to analyze the use of media on how people behave and why what are the perceptions given by the society, the people towards certain issues, certain things. So if you think that communication ni hanyalah soft skill saja, you are totally wrong, because that's why what is happening nowadays, with the existence of technology, everybody want to be a journalist, citizen journalist, right? So to be a journalist is not an easy task. You have to learn the rule and regulation. You should know what are the things that to be included in your writing, in your story, and etc. But if you recently lah, the latest example recently, bila ada pesawat jatuh last 2 days, right? Everybody, especially the netizens, share about the body of the mangsa. All right, so it's not it's not dalam journalism, that one is kind of tidak bertanggungjawab, irresponsible. Alright, so you should know, because dalam media there are some rule you have to follow if you want to publish or if you want to show anybody. Alright, you tak boleh just simply tunjuk that body during dia punya, towards dia punya the end of the line, dia merangkak. There's no such thing in communication. So that's why you have to learn about communication. Communication is not only about soft skill but also hard skill. There are so many things that you can learn from communication. In the communication itself, there are so many fields. We have journalism, we have broadcasting, we have films, we have persuasive, public relation, mass communication, and we also have corporate com. All right. So now with the technology, we have visual communication and etc. So this kind of soft skill ni yang something yang susah nak keluarkan daripada fikiran public tentang communication. So hopefully by reading or by exposing themselves to the media, they will know better about what is communication all about. Okay, that's for the misconception that always happen for the communication field. All right, so maybe Dr. David can share what are the career opportunities. Since I believe English literature ada some courses yang related with communication. If you look at your program structure, there are some subject yang which is indirectly or directly we are interrelated. So maybe Dr. David can share what are the prospect or careers that the graduate yang ambil this program boleh apply for.
Yeah, thanks for that. What you shared earlier, it's making me think about what it is that we do in our own disciplines and what people don't understand and what we try to do to help them to get a better sense of the disciplines, so that at the end of the day, I think they are able to function professionally and within the context of ethics also.
Yes.
I think what you mentioned just now about simply reporting as you like, there is a lack of ethical training and a sense of propriety and what is the right or wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
So that actually is also related to English, where a lot of people, they assume that English is a soft skill, it's all about language only, and if I speak and write and listen and whatever else well, why do I need to do a Bachelor of English Studies or even Master of English Studies? But they will realize if they were to come into the program that, as I said earlier, it is beyond language. There are also ways of looking at the world, frames of looking, which we introduce into the curriculum also. So that at the end of the day, it is not just about being able to speak or write well.
Yeah.
It is able to look at a phenomenon, evaluate it, understanding it, looking at it from different perspectives, and being able to make independent judgment of things. So that sort of training is very important. Otherwise, what you'll end up with will be nice words, empty of thought, which will be quite tragic, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And you were asking me about career prospects. I was just recently advising some students who were asking, if I do this, can I do that? And my favorite thing to say is that your career choices generally is limited by your own imagination to a certain extent. I mean, you can't do English and become a doctor or engineer, but you can go way beyond teaching. Yeah? A lot of people, as I said just now, English equals TESOL equals teaching and full stop. But, if you ask around, if you look around, if you investigate, you'll find that a lot of people who do English or TESOL do teaching, and many do not do teaching also at any level. Some of them go into communication, interestingly enough. They go into art curatorship. Some of them go into production of theatre. Some of them go into film production. I've got a friend who did TESOL and English, who then went on to do drama, who then went on to do film production in Hong Kong, and then film production in Europe, and now in Seoul, based there, doing independent films. So there you go. That's one good example of how English or even communication can bring you to many places where you can insert yourself and function well, simply because these programs teach you to be nimble, to be able to fit into different boxes. And you can cross, these are what we call trans skills that you can insert into all kinds of places. Because, whether you're doing communication or English, you must be able to think well, handle complex materials, figure them out, repackage things, address problems from various points of view. So whether it's teaching, journalism, writing, being an author, editing, you name it really. Some of them go into marketing even.
Yes.
Because you understand a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I think in this day and age, right, I don't know, but I mean, there are certain professions and certain programs which are direct feeding into one to another. So if you do medical, if you do medicine, therefore you end up being a doctor mostly, or engineer as engineers, or teachers of engineering. But there are a lot of other broader kinds of programs that teach you to insert yourself in many places and to reinvent yourself along the way all the time, with the understanding that these days there is no such thing as really sitting in one job forever anymore. You know,
It's true.
the whole professional landscape is changing all the time.
Yes.
So you want to be nimble, you want to be able to reinvent, to retrain, to refit. And all this really depends on more than just what you acquire in university. We teach you the skills to fish, so that you're able to fish and fish and fish all the time.
Okay.
Rather than, you know, teaching you one thing, teaching you how to fish for one kind of fish, and that's all you do.
And then forever you will do the same
Yeah,
thing.
so that's a bit dangerous, I think.
Okay.
So I think the same goes for people who do communication,
Yeah.
right? They don't, I mean, they might end up in, but then again, communication is such a broad thing, right?
Totally. Because if you look at the scope of the communication itself, it's broad enough. So there is also one another misconception about communication. According to some people, communication ni only can be enrolled by those yang orang kata extrovert. No such thing. Alright, because the communication field itself dah memang sangat-sangat luas, sangat-sangat besar. With the existence of the technology, it broaden the context lagi ni. Alright, so because of this, ada yang takut nak belajar communication because dia kata diorang tak cukup bubbly to involve in this field. No, it's not necessary, because in the communication there are several field yang student boleh focus on. For example, like kalau you kind of introvert, you can focus more on writing, or behind the scenes for the broadcasting punya field. Kalau you, basically those yang extrovert ni, kita perlukan those yang suka jadi newscaster, someone yang boleh handle dia punya stakeholder, either internal or external stakeholder, yang boleh communicate very fluently. So this kind of people. So it's not necessary for the extrovert saja, introvert also can. So there are so many careers opportunity for since this program already, or this communication field like English already broad enough. You boleh usekan your you can apply your education to in various field. Alright, so in the with the technology, you can be the content writer. Especially nowadays, bila dah ada teknologi, the scope tu lagi besar. You bukan hanya bekerja di your own country, even you can do it online. You can work with other countries, foreign countries like US, UK. So you can be dia punya orang kata spokesperson for Malaysia. And for example, like every TV station in Malaysia, they have their own spokesperson dekat outside, other country, foreign countries. So this is how communication evolved nowadays. Alright, so that's it for the career opportunities. Now we go to how these two programs, our programs, communication and English, foster cultural awareness and empathy in the society, or in general lah, Doctor.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that, because as I said earlier, English is not just about learning the language, you know, being good in your grammar or being able to edit language per se on paper. It's also exposure to different ways of looking at things, different cultures, different experiences. Basically, we like difference in any sort of thing. Difference in understanding, difference of opinion, difference in gender, sexuality, cultures, histories, futures, all of those things. So when we are exposed to all these various elements of difference, somehow or other, over time, over the duration of the program, that will also hopefully change the way you look at the world and yourself.
It's true.
So in other words, you become a more open-minded person.
Okay.
As you're trained to appreciate difference, to see why difference is inherent, you cannot really eradicate them, and they will always be something that you need to manage, like it or not. So some people, they are you know, from birth interested in difference, they appreciate it. Some are perhaps a bit more reserved, but they don't quite understand how to approach that. So through our programs, for example, in English, they will be introduced to things like world literature. They will be exposed to writings from, let's say, Japan, Indonesia, Brazil, the various ways of looking at the world, different personalities, different characters, different situations, and they have to put themselves in those positions. So we're talking about empathy here.
Yes.
So empathy and intercultural relations are extremely related. And the same goes, I would imagine, in terms of communication. When you deal with people interculturally in your workplace, or when you're doing broadcasting or writing or whatsoever else, there is always the need to interact with others who are never going to be exactly like you.
Yeah.
So that's why I said you can never eradicate difference. So the only way of dealing with difference is to appreciate why it exists in the first place, and how you would manage it diplomatically in a productive manner.
Yes.
So maybe you can explain also, Dila, how in communication one would deal with the concept of difference and how you can capitalize on difference to enrich each other's lives.
Alright, okay. So communication ni with the technology, dia lagi, okay, kita lagi banyak knowledge yang we can get from this technology. There are so many benefits of technology in communication. Alright, in terms of culture awareness and empathy, once you involve in this field, in this communication, you will be exposed to so many cultures. You expose yourself to the media through the technology, so you will learn more about foreign countries punya culture, even in Malaysia as well. Kalau before the existence of the technology, we don't really know about the small culture in Sabah, Sarawak. We don't really know. But with the technology, we learn a lot through the TikToks, through the Instagram. We learn about this culture because there are some person or TikTokers or any users yang share all this kind of culture. So we learn all this. We learn all this kind of thing. So indirectly, we know how to communicate. We learn about this culture when we already know about their cultures. We will be able to communicate effectively by considering their culture and etc. So because in communication, Dr. David, it's not necessarily all the messages have meaning, but the perception itself yang tentukan meaning behind those messages. Alright, so because that's why in communication we not only apply verbal communication, we also have non-verbal, which is non-verbal. I think more than 60% influence our daily life. Alright, so people more believe in non-verbal instead of verbal communication. Okay, in communication we learn about we also learn about we communicate through colors, not only symbols. All right, I just want to share one of my experience. I think way back somewhere in early 2000 or late 90s. That time was Chinese New Year celebration. All right, so that time I was going back to Kelantan, my husband family, and we crossed we went by that Karak Highway, and there is one banner in black color wishing Happy Gongsi Fat Choi. What do you think? Black color, Gongsi Fat Choi. So I'm quite surprised because I am communication. So I think something yang tak kena kat sini. Maybe those yang buat this banner, they don't really know about communication. Colors black for Chinese culture,
especially during Chinese New Year.
Yeah, especially during Chinese New Year. Something yang worse. I think you shouldn't do that. You should study first before you do any color. But because color is very, very powerful in communication. Same thing, the right color. And the interpretation about the color is not only one thing. There are so many meanings behind that. It depends to the receiver on how that. So this kind of thing yang akan develop culture awareness, empathy, how should we communicate empathetically when we communicate with our receiver. So this is part of the how communication and English studies or field foster this cultural awareness and also the empathy. All right. Enough for that things. Now we go to the next one. How English studies foster critical thinking, Doctor. I think there's a lot of idea from your side about this thing.
Yeah, English studies is not a self-contained discipline. It interacts a lot with its peripheral disciplines. In fact, it bleeds into other disciplines, and other disciplines will also bleed into English. So we interact a lot with a lot of sociological theories. And all these sociological theories will force you to rethink a lot of commonsensical ideas that most of us would have had before we are exposed to more complex ideas. So, for instance, English people who do English studies, therefore English people, They don't shy away from controversial or so-called controversial topics to deal with. We will look at things like sex and gender. What is the difference between sex and gender? A lot of people, they believe that you are born that way and therefore that is the way you behave and that's the end of it. No discussions. Whereas they don't understand that there is such a thing as a construct, that things we inherit are not exactly coming down from heaven, but they are all human constructs that we have been fed, and we have come to believe that these are the only ways of doing things, and we challenge those assumptions. We also challenge things like the difference between race and ethnicity, which I think most people in you meet cannot tell you the difference between race and ethnicity. And they will assume again that race or ethnicity, they're the same thing, and you were born with that, and there's nothing you can do to change it because it is in your DNA. And all that is actually false. If you believe that universities have done studies, they can theorize things, and all of these beliefs have been debunked for the longest time. Unfortunately, a lot of these things linger in public. It seems to us like all these ideas are not trickling down to the public level. And I think it is incumbent upon us as scholars within the field in universities to teach students who will then therefore spread the news, the understanding, and share the understanding that there are various ways of looking at things, and that a lot of times, a lot of things that we've been exposed to and believe, they are inherently false. I think you will find the same examples in communication also.
Yeah, in communication, how this program atau this field foster critical thinking, as we mentioned earlier lah, the misconception first thing, all right, because they think this is a soft skill, but it is not. In communication, it's not only about you talk, and talk. No, there are so many things. You are analyzing people, you are analyzing culture, so you have to know how to critically link this kind of thing, perspective into communication. I just give you one example based on my own experience. When this example is more to branding punya perspective right there. So we try to develop a brand for tourism, tourism destination. So people say to develop a brand is very easy. You just do this, blah, 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 then you will come up with a good brand. No, to produce a good brand is not an easy way. All right. So to rebranding also different things. It seems like rebranding macam you start from the scratch. All right. So for example, like this destination branding. The place itself owned by several people, several group of people. So of course the main stakeholder there is the people in that destination. So you have to get their punya perception first before you can come up with your own brand. Isunya dekat sini the advertisers ataupun the people always lupa tentang kewujudan this society, these people in the society, because they are the one yang akan provide all the services to the tourists. All right, so we have to know what they think about that place, about the destination. So we have to consider their identity itself. But the identity itself pun ada banyak. Kita sendiri ni as a individual, we have so many identities. We have an identity as a son, daughter, identity as a spouse, identity as a academic, as a friend, etc. There are so many identities. Alright, so I did some research on this. Bila kita buat research, we have two stages. Bila sampai dekat last stage tu, there is intersection between all these identities. So we have to find. So these are the things we learn in communication. It's not just talk and talk. No, there is no such thing in this communication field. Alright, so this is how this communication foster critical thinking among those yang enroll for this program. Alright, okay, that's for the critical thinking, how these two. Now we go to the last one. What OUM have? What OUM can offer for this kind of field?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, social sciences and humanities are very broad, really. We don't offer everything under the sun. What we have, bachelor level, we have liberal studies, political science, and we have Bachelor of Communication, but then Master of Corporate Communication.
Yes, true.
Therefore, the master's level, I believe, is more specialized than the bachelor one. We have the Bachelor and Master of English Studies. The Bachelor of English Studies is broader based,
Yes.
like communication, Bachelor of Communication.
True.
And when you do Master of English Studies, then you become more specialized,
Yeah.
but not too specialized.
Yes, true.
We also have Bachelor, Postgraduate Diploma, and Master of Islamic Studies. And on top of that, we have Doctor of Philosophy in Arts, specializing in both humanities
Yeah.
and the social sciences. So we've got a nice little boutique offering of programs in communication, political science, counseling, psychology, English, Islamic studies.
Yeah.
And that, I think, we synergize very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with Dr. David about the program that we offer. At the undergraduate level, we try to broaden the scope as possible. Sebab we have to know the nature of our student, our prospect. They come from different background. So since communication in English itself very broad, so why don't we come up with this kind of for undergraduate program? When you want to further your master, then you started to narrow down your you just go into specialization after that. So I think that's all. Anything that you want to ask, Dr. David?
Yeah. Just to wrap up, we just want to say that if you're thinking of joining us either at a bachelor or a PhD level or any level of studies with our faculty, it is fine to feel unsure, uncertain about what steps to take, which programs to get yourself into, what to invest in, how do I start. All the initial uncertainties are pretty common.
Yeah.
But you should believe that, any step forward will be the right step. Small little baby steps to understand where you're going. And if you ever have any doubts that you need clarification, always feel free to get in touch with us. We'll be happy to take you through, your major decision making, so that you will find at the end of the day the kind of thing that you want to do and commit to for the next couple of years or a few years. And we would like to take you through this wonderful learning journey. Yeah.
Believers.
So,
Believers. Social science and humanities is such a broad field.
Yes. One last thing. I think ultimately it is not what you choose. I think in life you don't choose a lot of things. The things choose you. So go with your calling, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Okay. I think that's all, Dr. David. Is there
all
any
right.
question from the floor or no
Do we-
questions? Or maybe
no?
later if you have something to ask, you just feel free to contact either Dr. David or me. So until we meet again. So thank you very much
Thank
for
you for joining
participating,
us.
for joining us.
And we will hope to see you in our program soon enough.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much. Bye.
See ya.
Since the past 22 years of establishment, OUM has been contributing a lot to the nation by providing education opportunities to the society, especially in the spirit of lifelong learning. If you can see the data from now, since the first day of establishment, there are about 200,000 of people enrolled in the Open University Malaysia. We have already produced almost 100,000 graduates so far, and currently we have nearly 28,000 active students throughout the country.
Life is a series of choices. The best way to predict your future is to create it with a vision and aspiration to become more. Take every challenge as an opportunity, turning limitations into possibilities. It's not always knowing exactly where you're heading. Sometimes it's about finding your way. To go that extra mile to see your future unfold. At Open University Malaysia, we create opportunities for all to be the leading provider of flexible learning. No matter